ongoing emails from the commissioners, from everyone else, we had, the organization had went out and provided services, because even before we were signed, we just did it for the area, because these services were not being provided. And given that, we have held on. Now, in that contract, it states that they get $5,500 regardless whether it snows or not. And to me, I thought that was a little bit much, but again, we didn't enter that agreement. My issue is that it's not that we're not willing to pay them, it's just having them provide the documentation. And then we looked at their timesheets, which we look at these things. The program manager looks at these because you guys want us to be accountable for these things. We looked at the timesheets, and you know, they have on here that they were out there on days they clearly were not, because we had to send our guys out.
But excuse me, Abraham, the same day that you came out, they were out the same day. They carried on from exchange from 71st to 79th. You guys took care of 75th Street. We already communicated that you guys were out there simultaneously. I rode the corridor. Snow after snow. And that's why I said pay them, because it doesn't make any sense for us to go back and forth, litigating, struggling, and when we are in a contract, and I'm telling you, I can vouch that they were out there. Now, did they get an A performance? No, absolutely not. Will we probably get them next year? Probably not, because they didn't have the know-it-all to handle the whole corridor. But were they out there? Yes. Do we owe them money for the guys that they brought out to do the work? Absolutely. That's why I said, let's just start clean, pay them.
Well, let me ask this question procedurally, because this is a problem that we had with the previous service provider. There were some issues even to now. The one thing that I just don't like, and don't want this going forward, are these surprises, and we've had a few of them with the previous provider, and we've had some currently. And so procedurally, once we have entered into a contract with someone, notwithstanding, the performance being what it should be or should not be, if somebody or the treasurer who has been authorized to make sure that those payments go forward, or has authorized for the provider to make those payments, does the provider have the wherewithal or the right within the procedures to withhold payment once the treasurer from the commission has authorized those payments?
Well, I think that as from a procedure, I think the contract is entered into with the service provider, and as commissioners, I guess we just need to be, I think we're overseers, because I don't want to sign a contract anyway.
Well, our bylaws say that.
Right.
The treasurer signs off on any invoice, before any check is cut.
Right.
From any entity, the treasurer must okay that particular invoice. And then on the back end, I'm supposed to go back and look at all of the checks that were written to make sure that we okayed every one of those checks, and then they reconcile with our checking account. Now that's my sole responsibility. I'm not reaching further than that. I'm not trying to give orders. I'm just doing what I've been assigned to do. I was assigned to okay. The invoices came to me. I forwarded the invoices with the okay to our current service provider, who was supposed to start on 19th, and I was expecting those things to be paid, because that's what I okayed. And that was the end of it. I didn't want all that discussion back and forth. Yes, it was not, for the last 3 months, it was a crazy, January, February, and March was absolutely chaotic. It was not what we wanted. We did not service our businesses during that time like we wanted to. It was just, we were praying for relief. But since it was since we have a new start, why drag all of that?
Let me ask the second part of my question. The second part of my question is that you and I had a conversation when we didn't have a service provider. We did not have a service provider up until March 18th. And since we didn't have a service provider, that we were not covered by the city of Chicago. And I learned recently that there had been this interim contract or snow loss and liability. But it brought back to me, your conversation with me, that as long as the service provider has not been approved by the city, that the commission is not covered by the city. So what kind of liability is that?
The commission is covered as an extension of the city. The commissioners themselves are covered, and their actions. It does get a little grayer with a subcontract. As our intention from the city was to have the services continue. And we would like to see the invoices be paid. In general, the way the commission system works is that the commission oversees the financials of the expenditures of the SSA. They review the reports, they approve the expenditures, and direct the service provider on a day-to-day basis on the direction that they would like to go as far as what, and as the service provider then goes out and enters into these contracts and oversees the day-to-day services to make sure that the overall services are carried out throughout the year. So in this case, given that the contract was originally approved by this commission, and as the city's role as, in the absence of a service provider, our department would recommend that these invoices for the period January 1st through March 18th be paid. And then once the new service provider took effect March 18th, then that's a discussion that this commission would have to have with the service provider.
Okay, so my other question is, does any service provider have the authority to enter into a working relationship with someone without the approval of the commission, even on an emergency basis?
No, the commission approves all subcontracts that the service provider, it's the service provider that is to bring those contracts to the commission for formal approval. And then once that approval is granted, then the service provider enters into those contracts.
Okay, so everybody clear on that? Because I think I had a conversation with somebody with that, and there was some unclarity.
Right.
I just want to make sure that going forward, that we don't have the kinds of hiccups that we had with the previous one. We want this to be a good working relationship. We want it to be smooth. And the bottom line is, it is the taxpayers that we are all here for, not for our personal interest. And I intend on making sure that that is what we do.
And I agree, and I just want to say one thing. We are not in contention with anyone. We have no personal interest in any of this. As we've proven that we paid out the other ones, the other contractors, All Points, Queen Street, all the others. My question would be, and it's relatively simple, because we'll pay it out. That's the board of the commissioners. My question would be for going forward, for subcontractors who do not provide sufficient evidence that they have done the work, should we still pay them out?
Well, listen, that's what the service provider and the commissions are here. We are to be in constant communication with each other to make sure that we're protecting taxpayer dollars and that the services are provided. We also want to help the businesses that we are entering into. We know that in our communities, businesses are underserved, undercapitalized, and don't get the opportunities. So where we can provide the help to those companies to provide the services that they have contracted to provide, we want to do the very best that we can to give that kind of support. But once the commission or the treasurer has made or we have entered into a contract, and if the treasurer has authorized those payments, then we need to make sure that we fulfill the contract. But we should have ongoing conversations, and If the vendor is not providing the service, then we can go to that vendor and find out what is the problem as to why they're not providing the service as contracted. And if there's something that can be done to move that forward. But I think that the problem that I have is just decisions were made and there were not proper communications between the provider and the commission. You just want to make sure.
Right. And me and Scott talk
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah,
And just
and I
not
have a lot of
only,
confidence in you, Abraham, and that's what, we had a conversation. When I saw that email, after we had a conversation, I was, really inflamed because like, you and I had conversations, we're on the same page. If there was a major problem, then you and I having a conversation, as the executive director and the treasurer, I see some major problems here, let's talk about that. Then we can bring it back to the commission, because I don't want to operate in a vacuum. I want to make sure that everybody in this commission knows exactly what's going on, because I'm held accountable as a commissioner. That ethics form and all those forms I sign, if I do something unethical, I can be sanctioned by the city, I can be removed from this commission, my reputation can be tarnished. I try to be a pillar in this community, and I don't want anything that I do to tarnish the work that I continue to do on behalf of my community. So if they're, and going forward, if you say, if we're in a contract and somebody's not fulfilling their contract, you're supposed to come to us and say, well, these people are not fulfilling our contract, and then you tell us that we're not paying them because they're not fulfilling the contract, but you are the overseer at that point. We had no overseer for January, February, and March.
and agree,
Right.
and that's what I'm saying, you and I have been in constant, and this is the reason why I took issue with it, because when I signed my name on the dotted line for those contracts, when I sign my name to any check, everyone else is in jeopardy, because I made a decision to go forward. Now, the reason why I came to you with this is because they didn't give me this information. And I just want to be clear, like I said from the on-site from our first meeting that we had together, if the commissioners voted and said, yes, this is what we're going to pay out, then that's what we're going to do. But I just want to make sure on our end, because I have a fiduciary responsibility to my organization too, because it's my board that's behind this as well. I'm signing my name for everything, and everybody on this table, I'm the one getting audited. So I have to make sure that the integrity of our organization is kept. And when I get a contractor, and like I said, I will pay the check out. But when a contractor shows me timesheets that they've been out there for 17 hours straight, when they show me timesheets, they've been out there for 20 hours straight, knowing that they were not. Given that we had to provide these services ourselves, because there was such a debacle, business owners were getting fined because there were no snow removal. So I had a conversation with those subcontractors and said, why, you said in your contract you're going to be out there 2 hours after the snowfall, over 2 inches, and they were not. And it was clearly documented. So my goal and my role is to protect you. It's not to have a personal interest in saying that I'm in control. I'm not. I'm just here to do that.
I don't think that we're indicating that we're saying that. And if it sounds like that's not, we're just trying to make sure that the process itself is clear. The process itself does not get muddied up because of the lack of understanding. If somebody is not performing, there has to be a communication of that. We can't stop that process until there has been a full investigation on it. I think that there were some decisions made here, and I think everybody would have to acknowledge that there were some decisions that were made that should not have been made, not to do something by the then not, we voted on the provider.